at this point. We are here on Vonvo.com on the Stand With Us channel. My name is Mike Harris. I am a grassroots lay leader for Stand With Us in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am truly honored to be able to be speaking to two gentlemen at the same time who I have great admiration for. Reverend Dumasani Washington from Stockton, California, and Ryan Bellarose from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Before we get to each of them,
now the problem is that if you accept the idea that somebody can come and conquer and subsume an Indigenous people and thereby grant themselves Indigenous status, that's a huge problem for Indigenous people, because by that same argument, white Canadians, and I hate to use that term, but truthfully, white Canadians can then claim, we've been here for 300 years now, so we're now Indigenous. And as an Indigenous person, that's not what grants Indigenous status. What grants Indigenous status is the genesis of culture, the genesis of language, traditions, and an ancestral land. Like, you have to have those things, or you're not an Indigenous person. Now,
unlike oftentimes Americans, as Westerners, we see things such black and such white. This person's black, this person's white, this person's brown, this person is on this side of the issue or that side of the issue. And we have to explain to them that it's very much seen differently in Israel. That yes, there's an awareness of someone who's lighter skin or darker skin, but they are Jewish people. They are people with a shared heritage and a shared, especially in terms of being attacked by enemies, those types of things that come together. And so we have this kidnapping, as horrific as it is, has given us the opportunity to underscore that fact. This is one people who are being affected by something that's tragic, and they're all feeling it on a very, very deep level.
Okay, so first off, nobody's ever said that the Palestinians don't have rights. All right, what I generally tend to explain to people is that there's two really basic forms of rights when it comes to this kind of argument. There's what we call rights of long-standing presence, which means that the people has been in an area for a long time. That those rights do not supersede Indigenous rights, and like you just said, Indigenous rights are the rights to self-determination. Like that's kind of one of our key. It's kind of like the primary argument for Indigenous rights, is that we do have to have self-determination on our ancestral lands and the right to protect our sacred sites. Now, to make the comparison is actually really somewhat invalid, because the problem that we have here is that our Indigenous people are actually a minority in North America. And the problem with that is now that we no longer have the ability to have like a population transfer to build an actual physical sovereign state. That ship sailed. But what we do have the opportunity to do is we do have the opportunity to build a nation itself. Now, a nation doesn't always have to be physical.
Conquest, yes. What was interesting is that with some of those groups, like for the Fugees back in the days of Lauryn Hill, she was very Zionist in her music. I don't know where she is right now. She's gone through a lot of different things. And even her seminal album, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, was, one of the title tracks was Zion. She spoke a lot about Jerusalem. And I remember having the conversation with my wife years ago in the Grammys, when she won those multiple Grammys. One of the things that we expressed concern with was that she seemed to be even subtly pretty Zionist, almost like I'm a Rastafarian type of flavor there. So we weren't surprised when she got attacked the way that she got attacked shortly after all of that success. Now, I can't honestly say that it was connected to her, so what may have been Zionist views or whatever, but it was interesting to me how the media really went after her, and she was really, really targeted a great deal, and she kind of vanished from the scene for a little while. So that's probably something, I'm glad you brought that up, it's probably something we need to kind of explore some more and see where that undercurrent is right now. That makes sense?
And with this, I'll log off, just also to potentially leverage that opportunity, like with Chloe Valderi's festival in New Orleans. Some of the acts there were well-known Bay Area hip-hop like Pep Love and things like that, and there could be a real opportunity there to reach out to that community.
Just so you know, real quick.
Worried about mentioning names. So there are some groups I find that are much more effective in their advocacy, and actually Dumasani's group's one of them. So like IBSI, they're effective because they do things the right way. I find that what I call sit on your ass advocacy doesn't really get anything done. And unfortunately, there's a lot of the mainstream groups, and in most communities, the mainstream groups, the more mainstream they become, the less effective they become, because they're less willing to take chances. They're less willing to to put their name out there and to firmly stand behind something. So you end up with groups like Stand With Us, you end up with groups like Camera and Memory, and those are groups that they're basically there to just kind of put the facts out. And then in Canada, we had a real dearth of groups that were actually willing to step up and say, listen, like, just sitting there and talking about problems isn't going to fix them. You have to actually get out in the community and speak to people. You have to use language that they understand. You have to be intelligent about it. I mean, one of the things that I really love about Stand With Us is that they make pamphlets and they make brochures. But those pamphlets and brochures are very specific. They're very factual. They're very well researched. So I have no problem using them when I'm arguing with somebody. I use the facts that I got from that because I can trust it. And I think part of the problem that we've run into is that there are sometimes people that call themselves pro-Israel advocates, but they don't stay right on the facts. They allow emotions, and they allow their personal opinions to be in the fight way too much, when all we really need to do is quote the facts, because at the end of the day, the facts and the truth are on our side. And it's the easiest thing in the world to win a debate when you're right.
Right. Though at the same time, I think you did highlight a point there, and certainly this is a challenge, certainly when I do my advocacy efforts, that it's educating people with the facts is one thing. Speaking to them in a language that resonates with their own experiences, talking to them in a way that reaches them, is harder to do. I can certainly talk to Jewish community audiences because we share a common background. We have certain things in common culturally, but it's very, very different, if I'm talking, for example, to an African-American audience.
I was definitely in agreeing with you guys when you said it's not important to present the facts. It's how you present the facts. You have to, I think, speak to what resonates with people, and it depends on your audience. And also what Jim Asani was talking about when he said caring for the plight of the Palestinian people, which is something that I think is actually a very important component of Zionism that isn't stressed. And what I mean by that is Zionism is a universal principle, and by definition, when you advocate for the civil rights of the Jewish people, you're advocating for the civil rights of all of humanity. And therefore, by definition, you would want to see the Palestinian Arabs succeed, and you would want to see them thrive. And, a product of that is, on one hand, of course, promoting the self-determination and the sort of dignity of the Jewish people, but at the same time crying out against the unjust treatment of the Palestinians by their own government and by their own regimes that rule over them.